You're listening to Second Cut. This is the podcast from thefilmmagazine.com where we talk about topics in film theory, history, criticism, whatever else that floats our boat because we enjoy it. I'm Jacob, and I'm the one trying to respect the balance.
I'm Sam. I'm the one who's never even been tempted to gnaw on someone's finger, not even a little bit.
I'm Kieran. I'm the one that is glad he doesn't live next to elderly neighbours.
Nice, lucky you.
Yeah.
Although mine are in a house. Yeah. Well, so
I mean, it'd probably be good if you need some like Pete Cobbler very quickly. Not good if you're trying for a child.
Good point. Especially, never mind. We'll get to that later. I called this female-directed horror, but when I was writing the description, and now that I'm thinking about it, we did contemporary female-directed horror exclusively.
Yeah, that was an amazing thing. What was it? The earliest film by any of our directors. They've all directed two feature films.
Yes.
I mean, they've done some TV work and some stuff like that, and some shorts, obviously, early in their careers. None of them are from the UK or the US, because two are French and one is Australian. And the earliest of any of the films that was released was 2016. So we're fairly good on that point.
Yeah, and one that I watched when it came out, just because, like, ooh, eating fingers, that sounds fun. But yeah,
I caught it at Abattoir Festival, and it's an interesting one. I don't think it even got it might have been in the top 3 that year. I don't think it won Best New Film that year, which is interesting considering there's normally at least sort of 15 or 20 of them sort of thing shown every year. It didn't win that year. I can't remember what it did. I'll have to go back and check.
Well, it's a good thing she made her second film, so she could really get that recognition. And also
I was going to say, she
weirder.
Yeah, you make a second film and win Palme d'Or. That's pretty good.
Only the third woman ever to win it. Yeah.
Yeah, and you do it for a French body horror, like weird out kind of thing.
Well, and like
keep going.
Only 3 female directors to ever win at Cannes. Like that, we did female directed movies before. Like we do this for a reason. I did some research into.
So who are the other two? Campion and Zhao, I would guess. Or did Bigelow get it?
I'll have to look that up actually.
Because Campion, I'm fairly sure, got it for The Piano, at the very least, in '93.
Yeah, you're right there.
And then probably... if Bigelow didn't do it, then Chloe Zhao would have probably got it for Nomadland, I would guess. This is how well researched we are.
Well, I guess while we're looking that up, so we've gone over like statistics about women behind the scenes working on films in episodes before, and it's even more dismal in horror, or was for a long time. It is still, but it's improving at least, as we'll see with these films. But the
other one is only last year, and Justine Triet for Anatomy of a Fall.
Oh, Anatomy of a Fall. Okay, so Chloe Zhao didn't get it. Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah, so another French win.
So we didn't have one until the 90s, and now we have 3. So,
I mean, that sounds a bit like the Oscars, where you didn't have a female Best Picture winner until Catherine Bigelow, and then Best Director, and then you get Chloe Zhao and Jane Campion in a row for 21 and 22. I want to say, and now they'll ignore female directors for another 10 years. So that's how it works.
Well, and I don't know about for you guys, but a lot of the women in my life are horror movie fans. It might just be my mom that isn't. My wife loves horror. It's her favorite genre. And so I was like, well, let's look at the history of women directing horror films. It's impossible to find that on Google. Kind of what pops up is like best horror films from female directors, things like that.
What you mean after you've waded through all the useless AI generated stuff?
I thought the AI generated stuff would be more useful to my direct question. What was the first horror film directed by a woman? The answer that I found was from Elise Guy Blash, something like that. I'm not going to try to attempt to say her name again. The one that I found was The Pit and the Pendulum from 1913. I know she made a short film before that that you can watch online that I can't remember the name of. She also made one in 1915 called The Vampire, which is, I mean, a silent drama, but she's the first kind of one. You had Ida Lupino, who did The Hitchhiker in 1953, which is like a noir psychological thriller film. Kieran, sorry.
I have seen one of them.
Kari,
Yeah, I have seen one of them.
Kieran, sorry that I'm calling it psychological thriller.
Yeah, I mean, it's contentious, but something like Message of the Afternoon has kind of elements of at least kind of dark surrealism in it. You wouldn't call it horror, but you know, if somebody had asked me what's the earliest one you can think of, I would be going back to something like the original Pet Sematary. I genuinely can't think of anything beyond that, and that's the late 80s.
Yeah. Well, that's what I found is most of the ones that worked in that period. There was Stephanie Rothman, who did The Velvet Vampire, which is kind of the first modern horror film in that era. And then, everything after that's the 80s.
Because Bigelow did Near Dark in 87, I want to say. But literally, it's kind of the late 80s where they decided we should give them a try. And that's kind of, I mean, there will be ones that have fallen through the cracks that are just so obscure that we're never going to know. But the ones that actually, let's be honest, have some money in them, realistically are going to be sort of the late 80s. And then before that, there are some there, but put it this way, 3 horror fanatics don't know them. So they're never going to be known to the common man, if you like. It's quite worrying, really.
Yeah, it is. Also, when you look up like women in horror film, it's often final girls. It's the women in front of the camera. And so, I mean, we've also gone over the men, women, and chainsaw stuff before about the victimization of women in horror film.
I mean, just the very label of being a scream queen, you know, which I know has sort of been reclaimed somewhat, you know, in recent years. But yeah, so that's to be the first term kind of associated with, you know, women in front of the camera in horror films. You know, just, you know, how memorably can you scream at whatever you've been put through is kind of concerning.
Yeah, and real quick, when I did Google best female horror directors, and I got the Google AI results for this, which, you know, the way that works is it draws from the top results, essentially, to give you kind of what you're looking for. Jennifer Kent is at the top of the list, guys. That's... we didn't have the best until the 2010s.
Yeah, the thing with female directors in general... that I found, and again, I'm not the expert, I'm not the feminist film historian, film critic, whatever that other people are. But normally what tends to happen is you go look them up, and they've got, like, the rare ones have about 8 films max over a 25-year period, if you're lucky. And most of them have done, like, lots of TV work as well. If you get them that focus on a particular genre, like it's normally like 3 or 4 films max for horror. Like if you get somebody, so for example, like a Wes Craven or a John Carpenter or something like that focuses on a particular genre, in this case horror. Like if you get 3, you're going very well. It just doesn't happen, and I don't know why.
And I think we've mentioned before in our previous Women Behind the Camera kind of episode that movie jail, you know, it seems to be a lot more kind of men in the film industry are allowed to make mistakes. You know, they're given chance after chance, and they can keep working. But you know, you have a bit of a stumble as a woman behind the camera, and you know, that could be it. You know, if you could be you could forced to take a back seat for a while. My go-to is always with when Patty Jenkins did a Monster, you know, directed Charlize Theron to an Oscar win but then didn't make another film again until for another 10 years until over 10 years until Wonder Woman. Because
Yeah.
you know it's not good enough to have your film critically well received and award winning. It's just if it's not a smash hit, you know, if it's not doesn't straight away become part of the cultural zeitgeist, then oh well, this obviously didn't work. You know, we have to try something else. We tried it with a woman now, and now we're going to go back to what we used to doing.
Yeah, and again, the thing I've always been saying for a while is that a lot of female directors now, you get sort of a couple of short films that are obviously kind of very much, they're not student films, so they're very much low budget. If they've got a couple of grand in it, that's amazing, because that's how short films work. They'll then do one, if not two, small feature films, normally with kind of regional backing or something like that. So, you know, film from the area you are, maybe a country kind of thing like that. And normally helps if they know a couple of producers that can get the money in, kind of thing. It's normally one or two films. And then somebody goes, they're up and coming, let's give them $200 million and an awful script at the point where the franchise, I'm looking at you, people like Marvel and DC. It's not just them, but they're easy to pick on. Where they've churned out about 13 movies in the past 5 years, and so the engine is running on overdrive and everyone's dying and they're not paying everyone the money they should do, and they get a female director in, and because the whole thing is running out of fumes now, everyone hates the movie and it's somehow the female director's fault, and therefore they never get a gig again for another 10 years. You don't see that happening with anyone else. Like in the nicest way, there are some directors that you like don't see make a movie for like 10 years and they weren't good to begin with. And then suddenly they're at the helm of like the biggest things going on. And you go, what the hell is going on? Like Gary, is it Gary Doberman? That just did Salem's Lot. In the nicest way, he's a writer. And most of them aren't the greatest. And I was looking this up because obviously I did the review for Salem's Lot. Spoiler. He's in terms of he's directed a couple of TV movies in 2007 and 2008, and then did an episode of Swamp Thing. But then in terms of feature films debuts or directing, from his movie Swamp Devil in 2008, the next thing he directed was Annabelle Comes Home in 2019. The reason for that
Nothing
is
to
he
write
also,
home about.
He was a writer. He wrote Annabelle, Within Walls at the Door, Annabelle Creation, It, The Nun 2. Then he does Annabelle Comes Home, It Chapter 2, The Nun 2, and then comes out with Salem's Lot. So essentially, he's been writing an awful lot of movies, which most of them aren't great. And somehow they go, yeah, we'll get you to make Salem's Lot. And it's like, what? Len Wiseman, I think, did something similar, where he's done pretty much nothing. So he'd been brought on to help do the new John Wick, Ballerina. Now, his directing includes Underworld, Underworld Evolution, Live Free or Die Hard from 2007. He then oversaw the next two Underworlds because he helped write it. Total Recall.
Well,
He then,
what I'm
as far
hearing
as I can
here
see,
is that
directed no features until 2025.
they're making a bunch of mediocre franchise films and probably cashing in at the box office. I mean, for those two,
it just seems that certain directors, essentially, especially if they're male, I'm saying that, kind of get a pass.
They're allowed to fail upwards. Yeah.
You're allowed to fail a lot more. If the film is awful but you make the money, that's fine. If the film doesn't make money but it's got some critical thing to it, or it gets a nomination for something, that's fine. Women kind of have to do both out of the park in order to do it, or be somebody like Catherine Bigelow, who have an awful lot of stuff behind them. And to be fair to Bigelow in the early days, yes, she got a lot of talent on board, but she was also best mates with I think, was it Bruckheimer or somebody like that? I think it was Bruckheimer. For at the very least, Point Break and I think Cold Steel as well. So she kind of got a few connections, which kind of gave her a fallback. Not saying those movies aren't great, but you know what I mean. You got the protection of somebody that was very much in the industry. If you kind of don't have that, unless your movie's absolutely amazing and dominates everything, what happens is you do something small, they'll give you a load of money, and then that one won't do well, and we will never see you again. And it's a shame.
I do wonder
Rant
with Greta Gerwig's success here with Barbie, whether that will kind of help bring up more kind of female directors into prominence, or whether it's going to be more pressure on them all, because not everything's going to be a Barbie, in terms of like its cultural impact and box office and critical reception. It's that kind of doing everything. And not everyone is a Greta Gerwig. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how that one goes.
Well, I was going to save this for the substance, but it applies here more, I think, where she's talking in this Vogue interview about how she didn't feel she fit in with like femininity. She played with boys' toys and watched their movies. And she said, it's still very imbalanced. It's only recently that I discovered other women filmmakers that I feel I can relate to, because they didn't exist when I was a kid or teenager. When I was writing my script, Jennifer Kent had a strong impact on me. So like, this is a current director who's like, yeah, I really didn't find anybody until Jennifer Kent. So
that was 2014,
Yeah.
Even Jennifer Kent, The Babadook is based on a short film, Monster, which she made in like 2005. So it took 10 years to get a feature film of it made. Like, I think she did one or two kind of other bits and pieces, but in terms of kind of feature film directing, it took a long time. It's just something, and I am kind of hoping that some of these directors, maybe the ones we're going to discuss today, maybe some others like Nia DaCosta, Patty Jenkins, things like that, manage to get to sort of 9, 10, 11 films, and at a point where it's like they're directing a film every 2 or 3 years.
And also
Because
their
that's
film,
also a thing.
and not like dumb shit. I don't want to watch Nia DaCosta's Marvel movie. Did she do one yet? I already forgot.
Yeah. She did the Marvels.
Oh, yeah. No, I don't want to watch that. So, sorry.
No, but even if they don't do that, I want to see them go, I've directed a big thing, and somebody else go, okay, then in which case we'll get you onto this 30 mil project. It'll come out like next year kind of thing. All the kind of, we call like the great directors, and I'm not saying in the nicest way to the ones now, it's a lengthy amount of time between projects.
The classic
people
directors.
You think of people like Spielberg, Hitchcock, even Scorsese, even
John Ford.
Coppola back in the day. It was like they'd every year, if not every year, it's sort of every 2 years, maybe 3 at a push kind of thing, because they'd always got people to go, yes, and the next one, the next one, the next one. In the nice way, I don't want to wait 7 years for the next one. I want to see somebody go, they are a competent director. That's why we should hire them.
Ridley Scott, even today, in his mid 80s, is prepping his next project while he's finishing the one he's on. And how many women directors have that opportunity? None of them, basically.
I mean, just looking at
also
now,
with Coppola,
Greta
it's from
Gerwig,
financial troubles.
Yeah. I mean, in his early days, though, Greta Gerwig, I just looked it up. The next film she's doing, she's not directing. It's Snow White, and she's only a writer on it. And yes, she's written all of her stuff that she's done, and she's mainly a writer that's done some directing as well. But she did a triple header, very well received, Lady Bird, Little Women, and Barbie. And then she's like, nope, I'm going to step away from the directing for a bit. Maybe Barbie just killed her. I don't know.
Well, she's doing Chronicles of Narnia
for Netflix. Yeah.
Is that the series? Yeah.
The series. Yeah.
Yeah, but in terms of like a film, I don't want to wait until 2029, 2030 for the next one. Even Catherine Bigelow's annoying me because her last film was like 2017, something like that, and Aurora's probably coming out next year. It's like 7 years for Catherine Bigelow. You're the first woman to win Best Director. Like, the Best Director Oscar winner should not have to wait 6-7 years to get another movie made. This is not how the system should work.
Chloe Zhao, Nomad, so Nomadland and Eternals coming out, quick, pretty quick, kind of close to each other, and after Eternals, it seems I hope that hasn't kind of got rid of her kind of
Yep.
passion for the whole thing. I hope that just hasn't wiped her out like forever. You know, if
Uh,
she had a bad, frustrating experience on that one. I mean, um,
I mean,
yeah,
thankfully, it looks like Nia DaCosta has got two directed things coming up. Oh, she's doing 28 Years Later Part 2.
okay,
Okay.
so that's interesting. So
So it's
get Danny Boyle back in, to do a factory reset, to bring it back to that world and hand off to other
yeah.
more interesting directors. Yeah,
And
that
then
could work.
she's also doing a drama as well. So she's in horror. She's stepping out of it. Both of those are TBA. But she's got two films in the works. That's genuinely the best news I've heard in ages.
Yeah.
That a female director of a box office bomb like The Marvels has got two films in the works. And a black female director as well. Like, when, in the nicest way, when's the last time you heard one of them helming something big? Like, it doesn't happen. She's probably the first. And to be honest, when we were thinking about doing this episode, I almost thought about revisiting her Candyman for it. And my memories of it was just like, it's a film that exists. I wasn't too fussed about it either way, so I wanted to do something new and different. So it's a possible one. It's not the worst ever, but I blame the script.
Well, Sam, before we get to another movie that could be described the way Kieran just said it, tell us about Raw.
Yeah, so Raw.
Or Grave.
Or Grave, as the French would say. Yeah.
Nom, as I would say.
It's certainly an interesting one. I would say it's up there with at least the most distinct, and for me, probably personally, among the best directorial debuts of kind of the last decade. So it's a film where a seemingly very nice middle-class vegetarian family in France drop their daughter Justine off at university to begin her veterinary studies. But after some brutal hazing rituals, including getting covered with pig's blood and eating a raw rabbit kidney, she develops an insatiable craving for meat, and even up to and including human flesh. So, yeah, it's a nice, cheery coming of age movie, but with side order of cannibalism, essentially. But,
Sure.
Yeah, and it was one of those ones that you get at least one every year where it's mentioned and there's 5 articles going, people were throwing up in the aisles.
Yeah.
It was one of those, and it's like, you've obviously never seen a horror movie before.
So one thing I saw for
I've got one of the early screens at Gothenburg Film Festival. Apparently, over 30 people left the cinema prematurely, and they had to take a break halfway through the movie because people were fainting and vomiting and clearing the room that much. So, and I don't know how true that was, but that's the report anyway.
And then I watched it with a proper hardcore horror audience. We're just like, nah.
Yeah.
well, one thing I
One of those
saw
things.
about Terrifier 3 was that they like had Christians at a screening, so like maybe those were the people throwing up.
Yeah.
To be honest, though, if you're going to see Terrifier 3 and you don't know what to expect because you haven't seen 1 and 2, what are you doing? Like, why would anybody go and see the third movie in a horror franchise without seeing the first 2?
It's another good cannibal movie.
I don't know. I haven't seen it. So.
But I mean, like, kids have done that decades of like going to cinema, buying a ticket for a film suitable for their age range, and then sneaking into the really scary horror movie next door, which apparently has been happening as well. So
Never
yeah,
did
the tagline for this movie, which I love, was "What are you hungry for?" So, and it's one of those kind of films where it's obviously because of the subject matter and everything. Yeah, it is a horror film, but it's one of those films where even Joy Ducournau said she debates kind of the label horror, because she says her intent was to disturb and to make people think about the kind of themes, but not necessarily to scare people, or kind of discuss them. It's just a way of kind of exploring kind of her the themes that kind of interest her. It's kind of quite a low key one. Essentially, it's like a coming of age film. It's following Justine like through her first term at university. So this isn't really a thing in the UK. I was finding it a bit weird, but I know it's obviously something in the States. These hazing rituals. It's like basically just making like the freshers, as we could call it in the UK, the freshmen, like making their life a living hell essentially, for their initial periods. So all these
Yeah,
different
I know.
challenges and tasks and stuff.
Yeah, I know. At my university, you don't do it for it's not like the whole university does it for the freshmen, because they can be in lots of different places. It's not
Yeah.
a single location campus, and initiation rituals for various societies are banned, and if any are heard of, they literally strike off the society for at least that year, if not multiple.
Yeah.
So it is very much frowned upon. But obviously in other countries, and that was one of the things when I watched it for the first time, I'm like, what the hell is going on? Like, this is some like horror movies. Like, that's the horror movie in itself. The hazing rituals.
Because she literally arrives, kind of finds her room, goes to sleep at night, and then all of a sudden she's been woken up by this ruckus downstairs, and all of these guys in balaclavas are bursting into her room and bundling all the freshmen out into the corridor. And then next day they've got to like a pledge of kind of subservience, to the seniors, and they're covered in blood, and they're going to eat a bit of kidney.
Carrie moment.
Yeah. And she's a very committed kind of vegetarian. The opening scene, stops off, at a roadside cafe with her parents, and looks at like what the options available, and the only vegetarian option you can see is just plain mashed potato. So she just gets a load of that, but a couple of
another similarity between France and America, I guess.
Yeah, she kind of finds a lump of, it's like a meatball or a bit of sausage or something in it. The mum goes and tears the server a new one for it. I mean, there is a stereotype about kind of France. It being a very inhospitable country for vegetarians. And I did actually do a bit of reading on today, and I looked at like a couple of like vegetarian forums and stuff, and kind of talking about saying, "Oh, France, kind of any advice for vegetarian go on holiday in France?" And basically, a lot of people were saying, "Well, yeah, it's better than it was, but it's still not great. You've got to be specific. Your French has got to be good enough to be specific and asking what you actually want and what you don't want, or else they'll just presume and they'll just sneak meat in there for you." So,
well, good thing vegetarians can eat butter, cheese, and cigarettes. So just don't be vegan.
Yeah, and don't eat cigarettes, kids. It's not good for you. So this it kind of, the horror cut and this one kind of sneaks up on you. Really, like it's a standard kind of like university kind of drama, basically start with her kind of rough kind of first couple of weeks, struggling to make friends. She eventually her elder sister goes to the same university, she's a few years above her, and she kind of looks after her to an extent, but then because they're siblings, there's kind of a bit of rivalry there and a bit of just a bit of difficulty there, because basically her sister, she wants to protect her, but she also doesn't want her cramping her style, and kind of just finds her a bit annoying, a bit of a drag.
I'll help you out. When I say sod off kind of thing,
Yeah, essentially, yeah. And it's kind of got this kind of quite unnerving kind of I said dialogue. There's not like loads and loads of dialogue. It's not a very talky film. It just kind of gets on with it. But there's always this kind of undercurrent with the soundtrack. This kind of low kind of bass kind of in the soundtrack. I mean, the music's by Ben Wheatley's. Ben Wheatley's a regular composer who is Jim. Where's he gone? Where's his name gone? Jim somebody. Oh, where the hell's my note gone? Anyway, Ben Wheatley's a regular composer, and Julie Ducker now kind of
Jim Williams.
Thank you. She talks about how
John's less successful brother.
She talks about how sound is as important to as the image in most genre films. When you kind of out to produce like a physical reaction in your audience, kind of sounds can be kind of more powerful triggers. And she worked with with composing for these kind of get very specific kind of bass tones in the soundtracks. You're always, even when nothing actually horrible is happening on screen, you're always feeling slightly on edge and uncomfortable. It's kind of always working in the back of your mind. So it's like subliminal. It's quite kind of interesting.
That's why I can't watch Uncut Gems, to be honest.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's some all-time kind of low-key kind of body horror kind of images in this. I think stuff that kind of really kind of makes you shudder and gets under your skin. I mean, I'm not good with kind of stuff about kind of skin peeling and rashes and scabs and stuff like that in general. It always just makes me shudder a bit. I mean, after she's eaten the rabbit's kidney, she develops this horrible rash like all over her body, and just the gets this horrible night tossing and turning and basically scratching her skin to pieces. I saw a Letterboxd review. Someone who kind of rated it higher, but also said the sound of her scratching herself will literally haunt me until I die. and yeah, again, it's the sound design of that is really kind of visceral and horrible. And then kind of just she's like a ball of Justine is like a ball of nerves basically, and just kind of really kind of going in on herself and just having a horrible time, nervously chewing on her hair, scene after scene. And then at one point she feels like she needs to throw up, and she's basically throwing up like a whole hairball, basically, just straight out, which is, and before like a night out, sister is kind of trying to give her a bit of advice, kind of trying to telling her she's got to dress slutty, because that's the rule for the freshman, basically. So she lends her a dress, and she kind of gives her a bit of a few beauty tips, does her eyebrows, and then I think she should get bikini wax, a homegrown bikini wax, and so she and this again is a horrible kind of moment of horror, because they've got the wax all over the legs and everything, kind of got strips on, and then it kind of gets caught, and you can see it kind of skin stretching and everything like that. And in the chaos of that, basically, trying to basically get this wax strip off the hair, the hair around the groin, her sister tries to cut it off, and when she's knocked over, cuts a finger off, and that leads to a scene where Justine, just who's already been at this point, has already been kind of craving meat and kind of secretly sneaking meat out of the canteen, and just having craved she didn't have before. And it reached a point where her sister's passed out from blood loss next to her, and she's sitting there with a finger in hand, and she's sensitized to gnawing it. And she's like just sitting there chewing on a finger, and halfway through which her sister wakes up and sees exactly what she's doing. Which I think for me is one of those kind of horror images like from the last decade or so that really has kind of seared itself onto my brain, because it's just such a gruesome but kind of almost funny moment. It's just so extreme. It's just you're almost going to laugh at it. It's just the ridiculous, the horror of the situation.
The thing about that scene is that you get this moment where the sister is Alex, I think it is, looking at our main character, and back again, who's just got the finger or what's left of it kind of in there, and then looking back and forth, and they cut. And they cut because there is no way you can conceivably write the following conversation, which they must have had. Like, what do you even say? Like, it's one of those where you go, what do you even say in that situation? And the writers went, we have no idea. That's why we're cutting it now. Because there's no way you can come up with that.
Funny enough, she has, Julie Ducournau, she has talked about her kind of approach directing, and she says some viewers find it a bit kind of disorientating, and a bit kind of throws them off a bit, because a lot of her scenes, she says, special dialogue scenes, she says, I'd like to start with conversation already kind of mid-flow, mid res, and because she likes to find the naturalism of it. And she says that life isn't like neatly divided into scenes, and when you come at just the right moment, the right scene, she likes just kind of a more loose kind of structure and everything like that. But yeah, with that scene, as you say, literally, you couldn't write that properly, could you? I mean, literally, it just ends with kind of just throws on Alexa's face, just looking dazed, like a tear rolling down her cheek, and then cuts to hospital where she's been wheeled out, and the parents comes to visit.
It's one of those things where I'm sat here now trying to think what I would write if I was there, like the following conversation. Whatever you write will sound cheesy and awful, because it would devolve into farce at a certain point. and because there's just no way to have a serious conversation about it
Yeah.
without it being blackly funny at the same time. And I seem to remember it's who is it that did Hannibal, the series?
Brian Fuller.
It's not. It was Brian Fuller, wasn't it? Yeah. And he goes, he initially said, like, why the hell would anyone want to do this? And then his approach was that the gentleman cannibal there's actually something slightly funny about it. And so he had to approach it from a slightly almost blackly comic angle where in your head you're going, this is actually slightly ridiculous.
Because someone just chewing a chunk out of your face isn't that attractive, but like someone who's taken the time to kill you and then prepare your meat properly, in like a gourmet meal and think about a wine pairing and stuff. It's another level. I mean, Joe Ducknash talked about she said, as far as cannibalism is concerned, I wanted a very realistic approach in order to avoid it's called the fantasy gap. So I chose cannibalism because Raw is not a fantasy film. It's very important matter to me in relation to the questions I ask myself about humanity. What does being human and becoming human actually mean? And it's like I say, it is kind of low key and kind of grounded, and essentially it's like a relationship film, isn't it? It's a very strange film with like a mountain of issues that they're completely effed up, but they kind of, it's about them kind of trying to kind of connect, trying and failing to connect with the world through like some horrible methods, essentially. I mean, shortly after this, Alexia kind of revealed she's kind of got the same taste that Justine does, and she's got a thing. I mean, first scene in the film, we see someone jumping out into a road and a car swerved to avoid them crashing into a tree. We've no idea what that's in relation to. It's but
that is a very French thing, by the way, starting off a film with a car crash.
Yeah. But then later on, just while they come away from the hospital, they stop, just by the side of the road. It seemingly just so they can talk about the kind of what happened the night before, kind of how strange it was, and how screwed up it was. But it turns out that that's what Alexia actually does. That's her past. She does. She makes people crash, and if the driver isn't going to make it, then she'll. That'll be her source of meat. She's using it to kind of, to teach her little sister about how to kill people without getting caught. And how to satisfy their cravings.
And I think that's actually a fairly interesting thing, because in a quick part of an interview I saw very quickly with Juliette O'Connor, she was saying about how the whole idea she came up with that lots of other cannibal films kind of portrays them as other and out there, and she wanted to see what it was like if it was one of those. And thinking of kind of essentially making a car crash and then killing and eating them, that is literally the plot of something like The Hills Have Eyes. So even though it's a different dynamic, it is still drawing upon those influences that are elsewhere in horror. And even if she says it's not horror, it is almost a realist, kind of grounded version of the kind of monstrous feminine coming of age films, a bit like Ginger Snaps, a bit like something that blew on my mind. And with a kind of trait in the family from females, there is a slight kind of cat people vibe as well in there as well. So there is a fantastical element, but you put a human spin on it.
It's also as soon as they've got there's a reference, because they when the finger thing that they both they blame the dog, they blame the family dog, who's put down because the dad says an animal who's tasted human flesh isn't safe anymore, and it's almost like once his womb tastes blood, then they become more feral. They're given to like the baser instincts and lose grip on their humanity.
Which is something that they kind of did a myth on for Jaws, the whole thing of that, once it gets the scent, it goes into a blood frenzy, which is not true, and was part of the reason we did all this in our kind of Animals Attack episode.
And I don't know the point I was just going to go straight into then. I mean, big spoiler kind of for towards the end of the film, So essentially, Alexa ends up taking the fall for both girls' kind of crimes at university. She goes to prison, and for for the deaths that happened, because obviously after all this, several people do end up dying, to satisfy their need for human flesh. And Justine basically ends up kind of finishing her studies early, coming back home with her family, and again, it seems like a very kind of calm kind of wrapping up of the film. She's just kind of having a moment with her dad. She's obviously very depressed. She's been to see her sister in prison, and she's just got to think about like what the rest of her life is going to be. And then her dad kind of comes clean, essentially, that as Kira says, it's like a genetic trait, around the family. And when he fell in love with her mother, he's noticed he's got a prominent scar on his lip, and apparently that comes from their first, when they first met and they fell in love. For a while, she avoided kissing him, and then he's got a line something like, "And then when we finally got our first kiss, I understood why." So basically, she bit down, which Justine does to another guy at university earlier in the film. Another one of these rituals where they're covered in 2 different colors of paint, and they've got to go into a closet to make out. She ends up biting him at that point. But yeah, basically he says, about your current predicament. Says, I'm sure you'll find a solution, and he unbuttons his shirt, and he's basically his torso is covered in this like network of scar tissue. Where basically, I think her mum has been feeding on him for a number of years. Basically, he's been giving her permission, to take a bit of flesh here and there, to satisfy her cravings, which is such a dark kind of twisted ending. I mean, the first time I saw that, I don't audibly gasp much at films, but I was like, oh my god, that is an ending. It's pretty cool. I remember the other thought I had. There's another film kind of in this kind of sort of general ballpark that I watched at university. It was a Mexican cannibal film called "We Are What We Are." I don't know if either of you guys have ever seen it.
Might have heard of it in passing.
But basically, it's a very, again, civilized middle-class suburban family in Mexico, and basically it's just a film. I think the opening scene, I think, is the dad. I think basically just subduing a homeless man, basically to take him home to eat him, and basically it's a whole film in this family's house, so basically around their dinner table, essentially, and kind of like the morals of that. And I remember at the time not enjoying it at all, because it was almost like too close, too immediate. It was almost like trying to make us kind of empathise with these horrible cannibals, and it made me feel deeply uncomfortable, which I know was obviously the intention. But obviously I was a fair bit younger when I saw that. This, I think, is kind of interesting. I think it's similar to Duchovny's next film, Titan. Which there's this horrible kind of imagery and kind of morally kind of depraved kind of characters. But you do kind of like them, though. There's something about them. They are compelling, and you kind of see their point of view. You can see that they're just not. They're very screwed up, and they're just trying to kind of respond to the world in the way they kind of understand. But obviously, ends up hurting themselves, and especially a lot of other people, a lot more so by doing that. She's got definitely like a unique kind of take on the world, and I think she, talking about writing the script for this, I think she was saying kind of she got most of the characters kind of down from the start, but kind of the one relationship she didn't quite work out until later was that of Justine and Alexia. Because originally they weren't going to be related. They were just going to be two students, just going to be a young student latching onto an older student, and there's kind of some like toxic kind of codependent kind of relationship. And she could never work out kind of why would this younger girl keep going back to this, this old girl who, even if she is just cool and compelling, just why would she keep going back to her if she just treated so badly? But then she realised, oh, if they're related, they sort of be obliged to have that kind of relationship. So
I have an excuse for everything now.
Yeah. So she kind of worked that one out. She also talks about kind of how Raw doesn't really start out as a genre film. It only reveals itself as such gradually, and basically, if it starts off, if it was too like naturalistic, too kind of cinema verite, it wouldn't really work, because you'd be watching this very kind of standard kind of grounded kind of film, and but then all of a sudden you'd be you'd be puzzled when she starts eating people. Um, so she wants to create like a specific tension kind of between genres, which she achieved through like just the way it looked, the cinematography and the color, and just how those kind of elements start creeping in. The lighting noticeably changes as like the darker themes are coming through. And I noticed earlier on when I was rewatching this, there's an Argento corridor kind of scene. She's walking down a red corridor at one point. When she's about to. That's the scene just before she's going to be end up biting that guy, when she's covered in paint. So there are clues kind of in kind of the
Suspiria
style.
is everywhere.
Yeah. I also saw this Letterboxd review. I looked at some, as I like to do with kind of some of these more divisive films. I looked at like the negative reviews and kind of what people's kind of issues with them were. But this one was the user actually said, "This movie is probably good. In fact, it's probably excellent. It probably kills that film festivals and critics can look at it in awe about all the subtext and deep meanings behind the scenes. But I was like 10 when I saw this, and I cannot tell you the fear of God that was put into me when Alexia and Justine just tried to eat each other."
Yep.
I
That's about right.
mean, there's definitely some kind of very weird kind of sisterly bonding in this. I mean, literally that they are never closer, these two sisters, than when they're having a fight outside in the courtyard of the uni with their teeth like sinking into each other's arms.
It's a weird kind of thing. Is it they always have in the anime where both of them are punching the other one and they're catching the fist in the other hand and then doing like back and forth like a Naruto kind of thing. But instead they're just biting onto each other's arms. It's again, there is a slightly funny side to it that you kind of have to embrace as well as the shocking side, and it's the fact that it's slightly ridiculous in a way that makes it.
It's a heightened.
Powerful.
It's realistic, and obviously, she's going to have the realistic view of cannibalism, but it's also like a heightened reality. It's kind of, it works in its own kind of rules. I mean, even it's a French film. It's meant to be set in France, and obviously, of French cast and crew, but it's filmed in Belgium because France doesn't have like those big kind of open kind of universities like that. She wants like like an American kind of campus style feel, so she had to go to Belgium for that. So. I also noticed that both her parents are doctors in real life, just like Justine's are both vets. So, it's kind of interesting. I hope she's not drawing on any real experiences here.
Her parents eat animals.
Some dark family secrets are right in this. I mean, I think it's a fascinating film. I think it really kind of, I've seen it a couple of times now. I think it really kind of holds up. It's still kind of shocking, but kind of empathetic and strangely sweet's the wrong word, but kind of the relationship between like these two sisters going through the same kind of experience and trying to understand each other and trying to relate to this world that will never accept them how they are is kind of a compelling kind of message. So I'd highly recommend this one if people haven't seen it. And it's quite short as well. It's not gonna eat up too much of the time. It's an hour 40. So
I feel like we're gonna.
And then once you've seen this, it's a good primer for Titan, which is like this but dialed up to 11.
Yeah, Titan is a weird one.
I love the part where she eats the car.
Eats the car. Yeah. I will say that it was like I do like the film a lot. I saw it at a festival the first time. This is the second time I've seen it, so I haven't seen it pretty much since it was released. I remember lots of things about it, and there's an awful lot of stuff that I didn't remember. Like I remember the kind of, we'll say, the final body reveal. But I've forgotten the finger. I'd forgotten the hazing with the blood and everything like that. I think the final kind of body reveal is the bit I remembered. And the kind of final scene. The final scene does do a thing where it's kind of shocking revelation, cut to black. That's the end. It ends fairly abruptly. And I like somebody that knows when they want to end something. Perhaps I would have liked just a little bit extra just to bring us down slightly more gently, because it feels odd.
Yeah, it's obviously a style she's a fan of because Titan does the same thing. It ends on its most shocking image, So
Yeah.
yeah, I think I think she said she doesn't waste time. She just gets to the point and gets out of there.
Yeah. Um, and Raw certainly does that. Again, I see it almost more of a kind of coming of age,
Yeah,
monstrous
definitely.
feminine story. A
Mm,
bit. Again, I will always
mm,
go back to Ginger Snaps because if you're going to have one of these, I think Ginger Snaps is your kind of template
yeah.
now. It's mine at least. Blew My Mind is another one.
Mm,
You know, they are doing it kind of thing of you're going through puberty and it turns out you're actually a monster and this is just a cannibal version
mm,
of it. It has its great shocking images. It's really nicely done, really nicely directed. The lighting's good, the acting's good. It's not going to go for everyone, and to be honest, the gore isn't actually as much as you'd think. I think it's the context of it which
yeah.
makes it worse. You know, there are lots of films out there with lots more blood, lots more gore, lots more guts and everything like that, but it's the context of what is going on here which
Mm,
is makes it more disturbing. Anybody wants more on that, check out, I think it's from 1990, The Philosophy of Horror, Paradox of the Heart by, I think it's Noel Carroll.
I thought you were going to
Noel
recommend a book
Carroll.
with or a movie with more gore and and violence.
No, his entire it's essentially an analysis of kind of taboos in horror and why they discussed and
mm,
why they do these kinds of things. So it's things, and there are, from what I remember, are sections on like cannibalism, on kind of the psychology and philosophy of some nicest way, defecation and bodily fluids and things like that, and why we're
yeah.
disgusted and things like that. It's a book apparently. Just looking it up because I read it like 7, 8, 9 years ago. Apparently, he wrote it to try and prove to his parents that all those years watching horror movies when he was a teenager weren't completely wasted. So
Nice.
there you go. But it's an interesting one that focuses more on kind of cannibalism and kind of almost like a philosophy of body horror, if that was a thing in
Yeah.
1990. And so I distinctly remember there was a cannibalism section in there, and remembered liking it, even if I can't remember much actually content wise. It's an
Mm,
interesting one. It's not going to go for everyone, and some people are going to be squeamish.
yeah.
But it's a film, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
this movie's postquel has some raw meat consumption in it, but we're not talking about the good version. Kieran, tell us about Apartment 7A.
I thought you were going to like. Here's the thing: like, which of our two films actually came out first?
Ooh, good
Because they both
question.
came out last month
I'm gonna say yours.
by like a week.
You know what? Mine didn't come out in France until 2 weeks from now. So, look, we're doing yours so we can separate the two French body horror films. How about that?
Okay, so under 2 months ago, this is one of the most recent films we've ever done.
They came
Yeah.
out
We've
the
got two
same
of them,
day,
like,
actually.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
wow.
we had talked about doing a an episode on Joker 2, but we couldn't be bothered, right?
That would mean we'd have to go and watch it. So we didn't do
Yeah.
that. So does that mean when was the last time you had two decently funded horror movies by female directors coming out the same day? Like in the
Mm.
US at least as well. Like that's almost going to have never happened probably. So at the very least, cause for celebration. Yeah, Apartment 7A. It's it's a prequel to Rosemary's Baby. Which if nothing else, will get people going either ooh interested or oh my god. It's a prequel to Rosemary's Baby. It's directed by Natalie Erica James, who directed Relic a
Which is
number
a
of years
great
ago,
movie.
2020, which is a very good movie. Yeah, it's about it's essentially I mentioned it when we did The Father because and also
It's
Mark.
what if Alzheimer's was haunting you essentially?
Yeah, and kind of it's essentially somebody went into like a GCSE English class and went, what if Alzheimer's could be done as a metaphor for a house, or a house was a metaphor for Alzheimer's kind of thing? And it just goes mad and bad, and it's great. A great little Australian film, but kind of Well, the trouble is, it had its premiere like January 2020, so now you know why nobody's seen it. Because I wonder what could have happened that stopped a lot of films getting notice around that time in the following months and year. Very strange. But they got her on board to do Apartment 7A, which is a Rosemary's Baby prequel, which is there's literally no other way to say it. I couldn't be sure, but that's what it is. Yeah, I watched it because I really did like Relic, and I liked Natalie Eric James. I'd seen one or two of her earlier short films as well, which I seem to remember being fairly nicely directed as well. And it's just nice to see her almost. It's not quite a James Wan, but they're both from the same neck of the woods. They're both keep going in horror. You go Australian stuff, and now you're going to the US to get stuff. And it'd be nice to kind of follow her career as much as I could. So that's why I chose Apartment 7A. Also, Rosemary's Baby. Written by so it's directed by her and written by herself, Christian White and Skylar James. Fairly sure they've done a couple of other things. Nothing major as far as I'm aware. And so it stars
Michael Bay is a
Julia
producer.
Garner. Yeah, that was the other thing as well. I put a tweet out, or an X out, whatever it is. I'm going to call it a tweet. That literally I started watching it, and the first thing that came up was the Platinum Dunes logo, and I admittedly wanted to cry about then, but I was like, no.
You just get such a visceral reaction remembering all those mid 2000s remakes, don't you?
Yeah. Here's the stupid thing though with that. I will just say the 2003 remake of Texas Chainsaw is not awful. It's never going to touch the original, but at least just goes full on in your face.
It's probably the best on balance, yeah. But that's damn it faint praise, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. It's not the worst. But unfortunately, then he just goes, Nightmare on Elm Street. He does Friday the 13th. I'm fairly sure he does a couple of others as well, and just goes, and it's really not great. So that came up, and I was a little bit worried. And admittedly, this film has its pros and has its cons. We'll get to that in a minute. It stars Julia Garner as Terry, who is trying to become a big star in 1960s New York. Wants to become a dancer. She damages her leg at one point, and is trying to follow one of the producers of this new show, Jim Sturgis as Alan, who's kind of one of the producers, and she follows him into his big apartment complex. And this is where she'll eventually live, Apartment 7A, because two lovely elderly people she's passing out. They take her back to their place, and she explains the situation, and they go, well, you can just live here. We've got this apartment. We never had kids of our own. You can live here if you want. And so she moves in because she's like, I will take free board and lodging. Like, I'm not going to complain about that. I'm struggling dancer trying to get some first big parts. I'm in the same apartment building as the guy who, I want to kind of essentially suck up to. And gets invited around to dinner for her. And then she has a strange, weird dream sequence. And something appears at the foot of her bed. And we have our Rosemary's Babies prequel. Sorry, it's pretty much just a remake. With a change of main character that you have to there's a couple of bits in which make it a prequel, and the ending has to tie in to the original film, but
essentially the same thing happened to two different women in quick succession.
It just feels like movie about woman gets pregnant with the Antichrist, and I'm not versed enough in Rosemary's Baby to know what the references were, to be honest.
And it's weird that we've had three of those this year, and only one of them's not been connected to a previous franchise.
Yes, and admittedly, I've yet to see the Exorcism, which was the other Russell Crowe exorcism movie, which I was going to go and see and review, and my car died on the way there. And was out of action for a month, so I didn't get to see it. I'm hoping there wasn't some kind of giving birth to the Antichrist in there as well, because 4 is just there is something in the water now, and it's not a shark. The trouble with this movie is that in the nicest way, there's no reason for it to exist, because it is a remake without calling itself a remake. Most of the stuff is exactly the same. The setup is exactly the same. The The moments are exactly the same. There's bits where, and admittedly, I've read the book 5 years ago, I think probably, and I saw the film about 10 years ago. So I've not got it right at the forefront of my memory in terms of this happens, this happens. I know like the main scenes and the shots and stuff like that. But it's not kind of I know every little tidbit off the top of my head. I probably should have rewatched it, but I didn't get the time. Lives got in the way. But there's even things like in the original when Rosemary thinks stuff's going on, she kind of tries to phone doctors or whatever. It's like I need a second opinion or something like that. And then it turns out the doctor's in league with. If you haven't seen Rosemary's Baby, essentially the evil old people in the apartment are Satanists, and they've impregnated her with Satan's seed to give birth to the Antichrist.
If you haven't
That's
seen
the
an
plot.
Antichrist movie, the doctor's always in on it.
Yeah, but the kind of almost Invasion of the Body Snatchers style kind of thing where the people on the end of the line are also in on it, where you think they'd be outside the loop. There's a scene in here where she phones somebody up, and it turns out they're involved with it as well. It's again the ending is kind of the same setup as the ending of the first one. There are obvious differences. For example, in here she's wanting to be a dancer, so in the script and the direction they bring in some dance sequences as well as part of her kind of hallucinatory dream sequences and stuff like that, and it's very nicely directed. And I will say for her part, Natalie Erica James is the thing, it's not absolutely astounding, but it's not awful either. It's realistically the best you're going to get in this kind of thing, you know. You're not going to be disappointed by the direction. You're not going to go, this is the next new star. And I think a lot of that is the fact that it's pretty much a remake without calling it a remake, because they can't. And in an interview I read with is it Hollywood Reporter, Variety, one of them, they go, there is an elephant in the room with Rosemary's Baby for obvious reasons. And she goes, yeah. And we were aware of that. And so we tried to kind of, it's a Rosemary's Baby prequel, but we also tried to kind of steer around it wherever we could,
So
kind of thing.
if Polanski hadn't directed the original, do you think they'd be using the name for brand recognition?
Possibly, or at least there would be far more ties into it.
Yeah.
The comparison that springs to my mind now, there's a novel, Wide Sargasso Sea by Jean Rhys, that came out in, I want to say the 1950s. Essentially, it is 66, and I read this for undergrad, and it is a Jane Eyre prequel. Okay, and it's never specifically mentioned that it's a Jane Eyre prequel. But it's about anyone knows Jane Eyre, essentially. Mr. Rochester, isn't it? I believe. I can't remember. I tried to blank Jane Eyre out of my memory. Essentially, tries to get married to Jane, and somebody bursts in, going, "You can't." He's got his previous wife locked up in the attic, and this is essentially following
Spoilers.
the previous wife. Jane Eyre came out nearly 200 years ago. You're
100
fine.
years ago.
Like this is like spoiling Julius Caesar at this point, you know. Like there's only so much we can do
Spoilers.
with Romeo and Juliet. Sorry, should we spoil the Bible for you as well? Spoiler: Jesus dies.
But he comes back.
Yeah, but so this is
Somehow
almost
Jesus
the
has
same.
returned.
Where it's, so like because it's before Rosemary's moved in, the name Rosemary's never mentioned. You know, there's a character that get a flash that looks like Rosemary, but Natalie Erica James has said this is almost like an homage, as a kind of link to kind of link it in without it actually being Rosemary in a way.
So is one of the old ladies meant to be the Ruth Gordon character from the original?
Yeah. So you have Minnie and
Roman. His name is Roman.
isn't it? Yes.
The
Yeah,
guy who is the demon priest. He is Roman.
Yeah. So those are still the same. So there are elements that obviously have to be maintained. It's the same people, and literally, because I think Terry is one of the people that kind of found like dead or mentioned, I think, in Rosemary's Baby. It was meant to be that character to tie it in. I can't remember the specifics, but they're also trying to keep it kind of as much if you haven't seen Rosemary's Baby, you can enjoy this on its own kind of film, if that makes sense. You don't have to have seen Rosemary's Baby to to watch this film. It's not one that you need the backstory or the forestory or whatever it is kind of thing. In the way that maybe something like Star Wars prequels. Realistically, you can start with the prequels, but you're probably going to have watched the first three. If you've never heard of Rosemary Baby, you can kind of jump into this and be fine with it. And actually, Kevin McNally, who plays Roman in this one, otherwise known as Mr. Gibbs from Pirates of the Caribbean, yeah, he's great. And admittedly, he showed up. And I'm like, hang on, it's Kevin McNally. And I'm like, yeah, it is. Oh my god. Like
You didn't recognise him
everyone does.
without the mutton chops.
I mean, I've seen him in other stuff before, and actually, my old lecturer worked with him on a film called The Man Who Knew Infinity, which starred Dev Patel as well. So he was very complimentary of Kevin McNally in various passings. But yeah, Apartment 7A. The trouble is, it's a bit like a slightly better version, and I'm going to do a comparison to the Thing prequel. In that it's essentially a remake that they've called a prequel in order to not get the attack. They found a way to remake it by calling it a prequel, and therefore go, this is another story we wanted to explore, rather than, getting the hate from remaking a beloved film.
Oh wow!
Because for all of Polanski's awfulness, Rosemary's Baby is a very good film.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think I said in my anniversary review of Chinatown, that they did the sequel of The Two Jakes, but a lot of the same elements were back. Like a lot of the same crew and the majority of the same cast came back, but the missing link, the secret sauce wasn't there anymore, and that secret sauce was obviously Polanski.
Yeah.
He did add something. He was a force, artistically.
Yeah.
Chinatown's the only Polanski movie I'll still watch. Like, I just haven't bothered with anything I haven't seen. I haven't rewatched Rosemary's Baby in a long time. Like,
yeah, I haven't either. Again, like Natalie Erica James does I think as good a job as she can do. Bearing in mind this went straight to HBO Max, HBO, whatever the hell
Plus.
it's called. Paramount. Okay, completely different people, but besides the point, it went straight to streaming in the US, and it.
So sorry, because I haven't seen this. I've just brought up the cast list. So Diane Wiest is Minnie in this. Okay, nice. Always nice to see Diane still getting work.
Yeah. So again, the people in it aren't bad. Julie Gardner's somewhat decent. I
think she's really good.
Giannofa.
I like her performance.
Put it this way, I don't immediately hate her. It's just the kind of.
Yeah, I mean,
there's no reason for this film to exist.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I mean, Julie Gardner, she's had a pretty good year horror-wise. Between this by the sounds of it being okay, and obviously you had the Royal Hotel over in the year as well. Which is one of a pair of backpackers, having to cover at this, dead end kind of Australian bar and getting basically it's horribly threatened, by the locals. It's she's got a good kind of presence for this kind of stuff, I think.
And she's
kind of
going to be improving upon it.
Intense kind of roles.
Yeah, she's going to be improving upon it next year because she's in The Wolfman, the new Lee Whannell. So she's going to be in 2 horror remakes, one after another, by Australians as well.
Because Lee Whannell's Invisible Man was great, and I can't wait to see what it does with Wolfman.
Yeah.
I've seen the trailer about a dozen times in the last month, it feels like, and every time I love it.
So it's like I am glad that Natalie Erica James got the chance to do this film, because again, she could have very easily just vanished, and she's in the nice way managed to get to the US and got a solid, if not outstanding. It's one of those films where if you ignore the Rosemary's Baby link to the fact it's essentially a prequel, remake, whatever you want to call it, it's solid. It's not outstanding, but it's solid. Everyone does their jobs.
It's competent.
You're not going to absolutely despise it. if you're trying to link it back into Rosemary's Baby at every twist and turn, you're going to get very annoyed, because that's what's going to happen. You're going to absolutely despise it because it's not Rosemary's Baby, even though it is. Because you're going to go, everything should be exactly the same as the original, even though I don't want the same movie. But if it's not the same movie, I'll hate it, which is most fans of anything at the moment, where they want exactly the same, but not exactly the same, and they're not happy with either of them. It's a competent, solid, like it's one of those movies where you're not going to hate it, but at the same point, 2 days later, you're going to forget you've watched it. Shove it on near Halloween, you're going to have an okay time, have some popcorn, munch some popcorn, that kind of thing. And I'm glad
I
Natalie
don't
Erica
even
James
think
has
you're
done
going to
it.
have that much fun. Well, if you've seen any of movies like this, it's pretty boring. Like, I just kept getting tired of the scenes. I liked the little dance part that they had, but so much of it is so standard to me at this point for I'm having an Antichrist baby that I just didn't care. I wasn't even comparing it to Rosemary's Baby. I was just watching it as like, oh, this is a big movie about Antichrist baby, and golly, it is what it is.
It's solidly directed. It's solid at best, and there are parts where you do kind of start checking your watch. But I'm glad that she's got the chance to get her hands on an IP that's well known, and once again show that she can competently handle a horror film with more budget. Apparently, in that interview I read, she's working on a new film, which at the time that came out, so it's going to be within a few weeks. She was apparently saying that within 6 weeks she was starting to film another horror film. And so if nothing else, I'm glad that it's literally like a couple of months after one comes out, she's working on another one, which apparently the description she gave makes me want to watch this now more than anything, because apparently it's about somebody that ingests human ash as a weight loss drug kind of thing, but then gets haunted by the people that she's ingested. And I'm like, that sounds awesome.
That's a good elevator pitch. Yeah. Can you believe Natalie Erica James doesn't have a Wikipedia page?
Yes, I can actually. Because I'm fairly sure I had to look her up on IMDb to find one or two of her shorts years ago.
Yeah, two films in, and no one's can be bothered to cobble together even just a summary of who she is. Well,
yeah, where some people do one short film and they've got a Wikipedia entry longer than an awful lot of people. But yeah,
always worry when you get to Wikipedia page where the controversies section is the longest part of the article.
Yeah, and I'm actually glad that this was a solid film, and I hope the streaming numbers come back okay for her, because what you don't want is two like astounding films and then they give her something with like $200 million. I want these directors to have the time to essentially put together a filmography of like 6-7 films before they've been handed something big. So if that fails, they got a load of stuff they can fall back on.
Another thing for this movie, like Apartment 7A is not a good title. You gotta have something that relates to the Devil Baby. Something that sounds like horror. I hear Apartment 7A and I think it's like a quirky, aimed at women sitcom. I don't.
Having said that, 1408, the Stephen King adaptation with John Cusack and Samuel L. Jackson.
Well, is that just based on a Stephen King book?
It's based off a short story. You
could have named this anything.
Like, isn't great. Yeah.
There's no like source material for. I mean, there is, but for this specifically, you can say whatever you want. Yeah. This could have been
the Devil in 7A or something like that. The Exorcism of 7A. The 7A exorcism.
Don't trust the old people next door.
It's Rosemary's Baby.
My neighbor's
marked
a
out.
Satanist.
It says Terry's. Well.
Yeah. So it again, I'm glad that she did it. Go find it, or at least play it in the background to help support kind of female horror directors. And again, I'm looking forward to Saccharine when it comes out of in ghosts haunting somebody that's ingested their ashes, which just please take that and go absolutely nuts with it. Don't try and make it serious, because that's what, like, a pitch like that, you cannot make that serious. And I'm very much looking forward to that. If it actually comes, I don't know, but I want that.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess the obvious segue here is this movie came out kind of the same day. Release days are tough. This came out at Cannes, actually, but, like, I don't count that. That's not a release.
Yeah.
Because the only people that get to see it are insiders and the rich critics and that kind of stuff. So,
and I'd like to point out that a lot of the people that go to Cannes don't actually go to watch the films, because it is because everyone gathers there. It's also a trade show. It's a marketplace. It's a place to get jobs, essentially.
And it's a prestige event for rich people to be at. Like,
it's also a prestige event. But yeah, just my point very quickly on that. When I was doing my MA, my lecturer Hugh, who had been many times, was trying to get something to go.
A huge amount of times.
Obviously, it didn't happen because then COVID hit. But I said, "Can we go and watch one or two of the films?" He just looked at me and went, "Why would you watch the films? Like, that's not the point. Essentially, the point for people working in the industry, a lot of them, is to go there and to drink and to connect and make your networking, rather than actually going to the films. The only people going to see the films are the critics sent there by the newspapers and the news outlets. Those are the only people actually watching them. So yeah, release for the general public was like September 23rd, something like that. September 16th, something.
We all loved this movie. I think Sam saw it first, and then me and Kieran.
Sam, when did you see it?
No, I think you probably did see it before me.
Oh, okay. Sorry, Kieran. Then
I saw it the week after it was released, I think.
I saw it, I think, on. I might have seen it that week. I might have seen it on the Friday after. I might have actually seen it on release day.
Oh, okay.
I don't have dates.
I saw it on the 28th. Going to Letterboxd.
I'd seen it before then. I only know because I went to a gig on the Sunday and I didn't see it on the Saturday.
I just know I was last.
No, I saw it on release day.
Nice. Okay, so sorry, Kieran, you were first. We all loved this movie. I'm not gonna say her name Frenchly because I don't think I could even attempt to, but Coralie Fargiat. Fargier. Okay.
I think it's Fargier, I think.
Golly Fargier. All right, there we go.
Golly Fargier.
What he said.
And one thing that struck me when this movie started, it's a movie, and we love movie, so that was fun to see.
Yep.
Stars Demi Moore, Margaret Qualley, Dennis Quaid, and then a bunch of other people. I have to scroll down on Wikipedia to see who they are. But I mean, those are the main. The two main players here are Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley. And I mean, this is one that I don't want to spoil, so I'm just going to say spoilers up front. Don't listen to this if you don't want spoilers for The Substance. Go watch it instead. It is still in theaters in the U.S. I don't know about over there.
Yeah, there may be one or two places still showing it, but you'll have to get to the capital to see it. The kind of normal kind of... If it's any less than about 10 screens, it won't be showing.
No.
Nice. Well... The director, whose name I'm not going to try and say again, she talked about her process with Vogue. One thing that really struck me is she says the characters don't have background. Like, they just are what they are in the script, and that's it. And I think that's really effective in this movie, and also, like, it's impossible for one of these characters to have anything other than just a couple words of background because they emerge from Demi Moore's back. But oh my god, I mean the story of this movie
doesn't emerge from Demi Moore's back, but
yeah, the story is that Demi Moore is an aged Hollywood star at 50, and she's like a lot older than that, like, so good for her getting to play that age.
I know. I looked up afterwards. I was surprised to see, oh, you're a decade older than your character, but I bought that you just turned 50. Yeah, you look good for it.
God,
I think if you're Demi Moore and you are well, you were the
Yeah.
highest paid actress in the
Yeah.
world at one point. You can afford to look a little bit
I
younger
mean,
than you
I
are.
mean, I mean, I have seen some criticism, like from some women in particular, kind of said, "Oh, well, yeah, you understand like the turmoil she's going through, being aged and being seen to be, past your best. It's horrible, but at the end of the day, you still look like Demi Moore."
Well, see, at the beginning of the movie, I whispered to my wife, I'm like, "Oh, Demi Moore, she looks great." Ooh, bad comment to be making about this film, because that is the entire point of this film. I mean, so she works for Dennis Quaid. She's now doing like aerobics TV stuff, which made me wonder if this was a period piece. And I think there's a lot to the styling
I
that
think
makes it seem that way.
I think alternate reality probably because technology is a weird one. They don't have some things we do, but then like
They have
daytime TV and
iPhones.
stuff. Yeah. It's just a bit off. I think I read it alternate reality.
Yeah,
Personally.
it also heightened reality for sure,
Yeah.
which we'll get into. But Demi Moore, it's a real downer that she is. I mean, sorry, that sounds sarcastic. It is a downer. She's been cast aside by Hollywood, but like she was this big famous Hollywood star. We see her star at the beginning, and she's now doing aerobics videos instead of winning Oscars. And she hears Dennis Quaid saying, "We need a younger woman to replace her," as he pisses straight into the camera, and then doesn't wash his hands when he leaves. We found out in the last week that he was not playing a character, by the way.
Yeah. He's literally playing himself, except he's called Harvey very subtly.
Yeah.
Like
And I
Roman the neighbor.
will say that although this is a weird body horror film directed by a French woman, this is one of the horror films that's more likely to get nommed for Oscars purely because it is a film about films. And if there's anything that the Academy loves more other than films about racism, it's films about films. Like, that's almost a shoo-in.
Yeah, but she gets into is it like a car wreck or something, and she ends up at the and like she's having a tough time. Like that, she ends up at the hospital, and this guy's like, "Hey, you want to be part of an experiment? Just dial this number on this card and play this video QR code." I don't remember how she gets the video. Maybe they mail it to her.
Well, he examines her spine first, so she goes a one final checkup first. And what they're looking for is like, what, his spine's big enough for another person to come out of it? What's he checking for?
No
You'd be perfect, dial
deformities.
this number, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it says, Kieran. Thank you.
Yeah,
And
but it's like a mail order thing, isn't it? And it's like that she gets sent like a thumb drive first that gives her the lowdown of what
that's it, a
this
thumb drive.
process is, and then she's going to order it and then go to a secure locker to pick up her supplies.
Yeah, and it's the Substance. It is a very secret organization, only apparently run by one guy with a phone, who speaks in an even-tempered tone and is very direct. So, and I also love that the movie doesn't feel the need to go any further than that because it's so interesting.
No, and it shouldn't.
That's all it needs.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They don't explain what they don't need to explain what the substance is. I mean, it's like it might as well be magic, for all the difference it makes.
Yeah, like and it's good because that's not the point. Like all the backstory for this, all the way the organization works, and all that kind of thing. And if there are sequels, which I hope there aren't,
The Substance too.
Yeah, Electric Boogaloo.
Somehow, Monster Elisasu is returned.
Well, what they'll do is they'll just make it another person that goes through it. But if they do, please do not try doing a where the substance comes from, or who is this organization kind of thing, because they are thinking of somebody is thinking of doing that somewhere. And please don't, because that wrecks the entire
Michael Bay.
point of this. Because it is it would do. The substance itself is kind of not the point. It's there just as a plot device, and a bit it'd be like, somebody with a film where there's a car crash that sets something off, and then them doing an entire prequel story of how that car gets there to hit the main character. It's just completely pointless and not what anybody cares about. And
The Substance will return in Secret Wars. Uh, So she is like, okay, I will follow the very direct instructions on these note cards. And then comes the first awesome scene in this movie where she, like, okay, we also need to mention there's a lot of nudity in this film. I didn't know going in who the director was. I was like, okay, there's going to be like something about this nudity, right? Like, this isn't just a lot of nude shots of Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley and a lot of sexualized shots of her. They're going to, and then they do, so thankfully. But yeah, a lot of nudity here. And then Margaret Qualley crawls out of her back.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
We
part of
should
the
just say very,
instructions.
very quickly, the director also did Revenge from 2017,
Yeah,
which
was also very which is also very graphic and completely goes nuts in the final acts. It's like this.
yeah. Admittedly, the last 15 minutes is essentially two people, very bloody and dusty, running around
And slipping
about 4 rooms
over
in a house,
slipping
backwards
over,
and round the
his
corners.
blood is
It
everywhere,
does. It is fairly protracted of almost exactly the same thing, but it's very good.
Yeah. So the instructions that the substance come with, so it's you get 7 days, like a newer, better version of you can take over, but then you've got to go back. You're sharing one life, so 7 days on, 7 days off, no exceptions. What they say.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and as we find out, though, you can go a little bit longer. And that's where the other great scene, like every great scene, unfortunately, involves Demi Moore just gradually falling apart.
Having a horrible time.
Having a horrible time. But it's always my favorite. Like, okay, I do love the part where Margaret Qualley is shot in. I thought of this word earlier, and now I'm sad Kieran said it. It's very saccharine. The scenes where Margaret Qualley is working out, sleek, isolating shots for body, like should be male gaze stuff, but it's shot in such an absurd way. Now I did see somebody say online it's shot not in a way a man would do it. I don't know if I agree with that part. But
I think those things, the shots where she's in the studio, are actually deliberately shot in a way that a man would do it, because that's the point. You know, it is a man directing her in the character to do these kinds of things, to try and get a male audience. The whole point is she is sexualized in order to drive up the ratings. It would be shot in the way a man would shoot it. The fact there's a female shooting the film overall is irrelevant.
And I think I've seen it. Thinking in interview with the director, she kind of says it's like it's so extreme almost that it's making you feel uncomfortable. You know, the shots are held for just long enough where you really thinking, oh god, should I be looking away now? I don't feel like I should be looking at this anymore. You know, it's really making you feel uncomfortable because it's just so kind of protracted and extreme.
Yeah. Oh, and that skipped over. I did like which comes back, and I love that so much. But her audition scene where the guys are like, oh, that last girl, she might have, had her tits right on her face. And like, there are all of those little bits of dialogue that then come back later in amazing montage scenes. And then, Margaret Qualley's out living life, being great. I didn't mention that another disgusting scene is Dennis Quaid eating shrimp. Very gross.
That brings in
it into the camera because
that brings back the thing that I took the most out of this coming out of this originally. I literally walked out and just went, somebody give the sound designers the Oscar right now. Like I can't remember the sound design as is because it's been a month since I've seen it, but I remember that the sound design was amazing.
One of the best decisions for it. I mean, he's such a cartoon character anyway, but just to give Dennis Quaid's character like these metal boots. It's like they're not like cowboy boots, or it's like he's walking in like the shoes off a suit of armor or something. You just hear him kind of clinking away as he's coming towards you as he's walking down the corridor. It's just
he kind of, especially in the eating scene, kind of reminds me of Denethor from Lord of the Rings.
Those
So Margaret Qualley is living both of their best lives.
Yeah, and
because why wouldn't you?
Unfortunately, Demi Moore is not. She's having an even worse time as as Margaret Qualley fails to respect the
Yeah.
balance as she
Yeah.
continues
Yeah,
to tell the operator.
and all she can do to fight back on the rare occasion where she does get control of her body back is just to gorge on food, basically. Um, I mean, everyone talks about like if there's going to be like a montage, for her awards acceptance speeches. It's going to be the scene with her in the mirror. She's arranged a date, with a guy from she knew in school who's just bumped into by chance, and she's got the date all set up. She's ready to go out. She's happy with herself, and she's about to leave the apartment, and then she sees a billboard of Margaret Qualley's character outside. So she goes back in, redoes her makeup, and she does this 4 or 5 times, and each time she becomes less and less kind of certain of herself, and basically just scrubs her skin raw, trying to get it right, and then just ends up she can't face the world. She's never going to be happy, which is tragic kind of sight.
Sam, did you say that she scrubs her skin raw by any chance? Sorry, carry on.
Well, and then also the scene where she's eating, like she's cooking at one point, watching herself on like Letterman or whatever, Seth Meyers, and she's like, she looks like an evil witch cooking up potions, going, "I'll get you, my pretty."
Just pouring butter into things, just like all vats of butter. Yeah.
It's interesting because essentially the whole film is a kind of, it's an updating of Jekyll and Hyde, which is the archetype which we'll go back to. But what it does is it kind of takes the kind of goodness and the kind of almost I want to say emotional, the good and bad morality side, along with the kind of physical good looking and not good looking sides of Jekyll and Hyde, and then kind of swaps them and puts them in both. So the good looking one is the evil one, and the one that's meant to be older, it's still Demi Moore, is kind of the good one. So there's a conscious mixing of these kind of archetypes, which means that by the end of it, you go, which one actually is worse than the other? Because you say Demi Moore, but they're both trying to like fight on each other.
Yeah, because as Sue, the Margaret Qualley kind of iteration of the character keeps extending like her life outside. His career's going so well. Obviously, that's ravaging Demi Moore's body. So as you say, she's becoming like a shriveled old witch. One of her hands goes first, and she gets a club foot, and then half her face, starts to deform, and just basically it's just sapping her of her life force. But things about these. A split personality, this rule keeps coming back. You are one. What happens to one? Kind of once it's taken, it can't be. It can't be put back. Because she obviously she makes calls. Saying what her other self is doing to her body. How do I reverse this? And they ask several times, do you want to stop? And she's like, will it go back? No, what's been taken cannot be replaced. So they're stuck in the cycle, and they're obviously always aware of what the other side of themselves is up to, but they've got no agency while they're incapacitated. Yeah.
Well, there's also something to how they kind of forget what the other was doing, because they come into this fresh, like, what the hell were you doing here to me? More of this chicken all over the place, and then having to like clean the whole apartment.
Yeah. It is it's interesting as well from a kind of point of view that you're kind of always on Demi Moore's side because she is the original, she's the one that comes first. And yet you can also, in a certain way, see it from Margaret Qualley's Sue, I think it is, from her side as well, especially the first time, because she's like, I've never been born before. Like, I am 7 days old. Like, you've had, like, 50 odd years to experience the world. Like, why do I have to cut this down kind of thing? She is, like, they're the same person, but they're not at the same time. They're just characteristics of the same person. So it's like, I've been around for 7 days, and it's, yes, you kind of come back, but I guess each one, when they kind of change into the other, kind of doesn't know if they're going to wake up again. So they're kind of almost having to risk killing themselves in a way. So there's an awful lot of that kind of psychological thing going over with the switching back and forth.
And the only thing forcing her back into her original form is that, you know, the fluid that stabilizes her kind of like younger body, but it needs to be replenished. You know, and it can't be replenished once. Basically, the older body is drained. You know, it needs to wake up to, you know, for that to come back. So, um, and you know, obviously we'll get into it. You know, when things really go downhill towards the end, you know, both, you know, bodies do encounter each other. There is a point where they're both conscious and basically fighting for their right to continue to exist, essentially,
Well,
which drives them some ill-advised decisions based on the instructions they've been given. But of course, you know, like. It's like a fable, you know. You're never going to, you know, exactly follow the instructions you're given. You know, there's always going to be hubris getting in the way, and you know, you make a mistake at, you know, just the wrong moment, and you'll pay for it.
well, and by that point, Demi Moore she looks like Gollum, and so, like, Margaret Qualley is living, you know, for a few months as herself as Demi Moore breaks down in a closet. She has this really hot boyfriend, and he goes like into the bathroom or something, and Demi Moore attacks him, and oh my god, like I loved that scene. And then they're fighting, but then comes the best part of the movie. I expected the movie to end after they fought. Guys, when did you think the movie was going to end?
After they fought.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
because
but I knew like the New Year show was coming up because they kept mentioning it. I knew it had to be part of it, but I didn't expect the manner in which we would get to see the New Year show.
Yeah.
This is one of those films where kind of it's not, and I'm going to use the phrase "Return of the King" ending, but it is one of those ones I think almost like the Nightingale, where you can understand
Yeah.
why they went on, but
Yeah.
there's also about 4 times that they could have ended it where the story would have ended perfectly
Yeah.
fine as and when they did. It's almost like bonus material.
Yeah, it's
in a
2
way.
hours 20. It's 2 hours 20, which is quite long for the kind of film it is. But at the same time, I can't think what they cut out really, and kind of still kind of
No.
be able to say what they want to say with it. You
It's
know,
paced so
all those
well.
scenes all those
Yeah.
scenes have serve a really important purpose, you know, and all, you know, feed into each other and everything. So, you know, I don't really begrudge it for that.
Yeah. I think it's almost like kind of bonus content. I'm thinking of the 7th, technically not the last because he did an 8th one in the middle, Dark Tower book, and right at the end, it gets to the end of the journey. I'm not going to give too many spoilers away for those who still want to plow through all 7 Dark Tower novels.
I'm halfway through, no spoilers. I'm
Okay.
on volume 5.
Walls of the Callar is great.
Yes,
But yeah, it essentially gets to near the end of the 7th book and it stops. And Stephen King goes, here's the thing. If you want to stop here, go for it. Because like there is almost a coda which once you've read it, you can't kind of go back. And he goes, I kind of wanted to stop it here, but at the same time I wanted to do it. So it's almost like an alternative ending kind of thing that tacks on the end. He goes, if you want to stop here, go for it. Because realistically, the thing is over. But there is extra material, do you dare read on? And this almost feels like this, where there's kind of 4 or 5 places where they could have ended it, and that's perfectly fine.
But at the same time,
let's also go forward.
This feels necessary because they're Elizabeth and Sue. When Sue decides, well, I'm going to give myself the substance so I can have a more perfecter version of me, then we have the wonderful Monstro Alyssa Sue. Which is
probably the best gag in the film, because you have the chapter titles. You have Elizabeth, you have Sue, and you have this big title at the end. Surprise! Third character has entered the room,
and she's the one with the most love and self-respect, and she's a beautiful soul.
She turns into the Toxic Avenger. You know, she's all sweetness and light on the inside, but.
Although apparently the costume design I'm just seeing on Wiki very much inspired by David Lynch, The Elephant Man, which is as soon as you go, yeah, obviously.
Well, the voice, definitely, the way she slurs and stuff, you know.
She's got like
almost a female with the head kind of shaping as well.
She has multiple faces. Demi Moore's face is on her back with a permanently open mouth.
She has a breast on her face.
Yes, yeah. She has hair-ish strands. Hair strands. There we go.
I'm almost seeing the finale of The Thing, where it has all the different kind of bits
Yeah.
out of it, including the
Yeah.
dog it was going to
Yeah.
transform
Yeah.
into.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
a slightly more body horror version, but with the multiple faces. Sam will get this reference. Doctor Who, the Absorbaloth.
Yes. Yes.
Only Sam will get that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's big and monstrous and mad and stupid and great.
and she
It's got faces all over itself.
and
yeah.
she staples the giant portrait of Demi Moore's face, cuts it out of the frame. She's been moving it in and out of the living room,
Yeah.
and she staples it on her face.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
No, I mean, this is one bit of fun that kind of threw me a little bit because at first I was thinking, oh, this is this commentary about like it's all about fame. As long as she's famous, no one cares because she's staggering in, this ill-fitting dress with this kind of stapled on picture on her face, and people are still cheering and welcoming her and everything. And I was like, oh, maybe they really don't see what she is now, and it's some kind of weird commentary. But then the picture falls away and they're screaming like she's a monster. So I was like, so okay, they were just stupid, right? Okay.
well, she also has that hallucination part too, as she enters
Yeah.
the studio.
I thought her entering the studio back then was meant to be almost a hallucination, although how she got there. I think at a certain point you just go, just run with it.
Maybe that's Sue's
but-
reality. She's getting to see that.
But then everyone freaks out, and then it does what I actually didn't expect it to do, which is it goes, let's have some blood. And then it just keeps going. And I'm like, okay, the body horror stuff I kind of expected. The weird kind of like fleshy
Blood
stuff, fine.
sprinkler.
But then it
do you
goes
think-
Evil Dead remake on it.
I was going to say, do you think the Evil Dead remake record for the amount of fake blood in one scene has been broken now?
Somebody tried to. I'm not sure who broke it because the Evil Dead remake took it off Brain Dead, didn't it? Dead Alive, the Peter Jackson movie, and that had it. Somebody has tried to beat it. I don't know. I will look that up for you now. But yeah, it just goes mad.
Evil Dead remake literally had it raining blood, so it's kind of understandable.
And also, this whole ending goes back to what you were talking about, Sam, with it's funny and it's also horrifying, and I think this is a bit more intentionally funny. But there were a lot of laughs in my theater. I was in a pretty full theater when I saw this, and people were laughing, people were having a good time.
Unfortunately, I was in a quite deserted cinema. I think there were only 5 or 6 of us in there. I think a couple behind me, and then a few rows ahead. I couldn't
So much
hear
for the
anyone else
culture
laughing.
capital of the UK.
Yeah, so I was trying to kind of keep my laughter under wraps because I couldn't hear anyone else laughing. So I thought I'd better not ruin it for anyone.
By the way, a movie called Iron Lung, based on the video game, has now taken the record. And the director, who also I think plays the main character, apparently was eventually hospitalized, probably based on the amount of blood that he wanted to use.
Okay. I was wondering if it was a needing an iron lung, but good.
It's based on the video game of the same name, apparently. I don't know, I've never heard of it. But this is apparently something I need to see, because lots of blood. But yeah,
Well-
this does go for more blood than you're expecting.
And then Sue's face comes off the body. I forget how, and it crawls onto her Hollywood star.
She runs outside and then trips over and sort of explodes on the pavement.
That's it. Explodes on the pavement. And then so I think we mentioned this a couple weeks ago, or maybe last week, but like none of this movie is subtle, but I don't care. It's done so well.
It's beating around the head. It's beating around the head of metaphor. It's like it's like that line from Dodgeball. It's a metaphor, but it actually happens.
Yeah, and I mean a lot of the time I will complain if metaphors are so overly dully, just like beating you over the head. Like, yes, we get the point. Most of the time it's because it does that and then drives all the fun out of a movie at the same time. This at least is fun and slightly stupid, and you get to see Demi Moore fighting herself, transforming into a big monster thing, and blood squirting everywhere, and the whole thing is obvious from like scene 2, but it just goes, sod it, we're going to run with it and see what happens. And at the very least, you go, that's what I like about these movies. And you know what?
Yeah.
Everybody's on top form, top pitch, going at it.
Give
Why not?
give Demi Moore the Oscar now, you cowards.
She won't even get the nom.
Probably.
Margaret Qualley might get a nom for supporting if you're lucky.
Well, and
And I think it might get something for sound design or possibly makeup for the prosthetics. But Demi Moore is not going to get nommed. You won't even get submitted.
Fun fact: Margaret Qualley is wearing prosthetic breasts in this film.
Yeah,
did not know that.
Because she said I think she said she's so petite. She said no one would buy me as a younger version of Demi Moore. I mean, just look at her. So
and apparently, Coralie, insert second name here, kind of. Yeah, apparently, according to her, to Margaret Qualley, wanted somebody that was, I think in her word, the word that she used in an interview was curvaceous. Again, in order to kind of fit a kind of male fancy, male gaze kind of thing, and just went, we're going to need some curves on the top part. So she's wearing prosthetics for that as well.
And she thanked. I think she's thanked like the prosthetics department for. I think she said like, giving her the rack of her dreams.
It just reminds me of is it the time when it was the Northman, wasn't it, where they kind of wanted to the finale of the Northman,
on the volcano,
Skarsgård and whoever it is, fighting nude on a volcano on Hekla, I believe it is the volcano. That they obviously couldn't do it nude, but then wanted to, so they had to CGI in their relative genitalia in various parts. And this is like, oh, we're gonna have to give you fake breasts instead.
Yeah. So it's also like when they did the film version of Dr. Manhattan in Watchmen, and there was much discussion about what size genitals to give him, and they on the sliding scale from 1 to 10, I think they went for 8.
Yeah.
And I think this movie also goes back to Rosemary's Baby-ish, where there's like something is kind of inhabiting your body, even though not really, but kind of, because they are one, but they're separate bodies. The philosophy of this movie is very interesting, as we've kind of looked at the complexities of them being one, but also not.
And I mean, both this and Apartment 7A in some way, I mean, one is better than the other as a film, but they are both in a way of kind of looking at women and going, how far would you go for fame and fortune, and this one to continue, in Apartment 7A to get it, and the cost of that, and essentially an awful lot of time the men that are the gatekeepers and will do everything to stop it. I think it is, I don't know if, because I'm literally just thinking about it now, I haven't thought it through, how much of the kind of subtext of the film would change if on the other end of the phone it was a female voice saying these things, as almost because if you have a female voice, it's almost like an inner conscience. If you have the male voice that's there, it's kind of we are the scientists, we are the gatekeepers, this is what you must do in order to do it. So that very slightly changes the subtext. So there's stuff you can play around with, and again, it's kind of, it's a big metaphor beating you around the head. You kind of come out of it and start quoting Parasite. It's so metaphorical. But at the same time, you know what was the budget for this? It wasn't much. I would say if it was 10 mil, that's astonishing.
$17.5.
In which case it made a loss. But I am betting it will. Oh no, it got a box office of 33 mil. Flipping heck. Well done. Well done, that film, for getting 33 million out of a 2+ hour artsy film starring a movie which a lot of the people going to see it will have only vaguely heard of from back in the day. Let's be honest. When it was like, in the nicest way to know more, what was the last film you remember her being in?
Well, and really, apparently she had not heard of body horror before this movie somehow.
In the nicest way, I don't think Demi Moore needed to be in a body horror movie.
You know what I mean? Hear about it?
You get to a certain caliber, you don't have to go through your low budget horror movies to survive.
Yeah.
It's one of those things. But you know what? Thank God she's in it, and thank God this made, at the very least, looking like almost its money back. And by the time it goes on to, I was about to say streaming. It'll go on to Mubi.
Yeah.
But if they do DVDs and stuff like that and all those kind of things, it will make the money back. Because with all these
Oh, yeah.
things and maybe TV rights, it'll get to 40 mil, which is around where it would need to be. And thank God it does, because it's great. It will probably again get nommed for something, probably in the technical department. I would expect.
It could also get screenplay, because that's what it got at Cannes. So
you'd say all these things it can, but they didn't put Titan forward for pretty much anything, despite winning Palme d'Or. So
maybe it's implied.
It's a horror movie, so you've got to actually have the Academy look at a horror movie first. So like that's going to happen.
Just tell all the guys that there's nudity in it, and then that'll trick them.
Yeah.
No, because otherwise they'd have seen every horror movie under the sun.
Good point.
No, I reckon it's a probable shout for makeup, costume makeup, prosthetics, whatever it'll be, or special visual effects, whatever you want to call it. Possibility for sound design, and at a push, possibly Margaret Qualley. I don't think Demi Moore will get it. And if Margaret Qualley does it, it'll be in supporting. They'll put her in supporting, because they'll just go.
I think she'll be. I think she will. I think she will get nomination, but I don't think she'll win, because the Academy again, like a proper story arc, don't they? If they're awards, big actress, biggest actress in the '90s, went away for a while, couldn't get work because suffered various personal career setbacks. Now has comes back with a really interesting kind of postscript to her career. I think she'll get a nomination for that.
Thank you, France.
It should do. It should do, but I don't think it will, because that's not how it works. I say this, and then Coda won Best Picture in 2022. So what the hell does anyone know? Nobody's heard of that movie. Everyone was going, it's going to be Power of the Dog or Belfast, and that was 90% of the votes, and Coda wins, and I still have no idea what that movie is about. I've not a clue.
You're both braver than I to even bother speculating, because I will not talk about it until it's been released.
Yeah. So, yeah, please, if you can, go see The Substance. If not, find it when it comes out on something. If not, rewatch it 1,000 times, because somebody that comes out with a random, in the nicest way, kind of desert-based rape revenge horror flick, and then does this, needs to be making more stuff.
Yeah.
Yep. And thank goodness she's French. Maybe she won't have to do a Marvel movie. That'd be nice.
Let me just see if she's got anything else in the pipeline very, very quickly, since we've talked about the others. No, not that I can see.
Yeah, she'll get there.
Yes.
Surely.
She should do.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's it for this one. I'm sure we'll do another female-directed horror again, because we did the Jennifer Kent one last year. Or this year? I don't remember when. But just at a certain point, we like to do horror films. And, we talked about all the stuff at the top about there aren't enough women directing them. So keep it up.
Yeah, and I always like to, every so often, go, we need to do a female-focused one, because in the nicest way, sometimes you kind of have to go seeking them out, because they're like 95, 96% of the time not the ones that are just shoving stuff in the cinema without you noticing, kind of thing. You almost have to deliberately go seek them out, and so I have to kind of force myself, because they don't immediately just swing across my path, go, I need to go and do that to support them. So this is a good opportunity for me to make me go and do that, and that's half the fun of film, is exploring.
Yep. But we'll be back with more horror next week. But until then, guys, where can people find you?
You can find me at SSB Thinks Film and at the Film Magazine, where I've got my Where to Start with Boris Karloff piece up right now. And in the coming days, I don't know exactly when it'll be up, but when it's been edited, I'll be there'll be a big old list from me, which will be ranking all of the Universal monster movies, the original cycle from the 30s through to the 50s. So
Okay. Not
forward to that.
any monster movie done by Universal, because like
No,
95 of
no.
them.
No.
Somebody on about 5 years ago, I found a list on IMDb. There's somebody who made like 95,
Yeah.
96 of them, and I watched them all.
Yeah. I know there's arguments for a lot of them, but no, I've gone for the Investcom's official ones. You know, using one of their core cast of monsters, basically.
Okay.
So, which I
Good.
made up to 32, which is plenty.
Yeah, good man. As for me, hopefully you don't find me anywhere, but if you do, I'm K Judgmental in the various places. I have reviews of the New Salem's Lot film up now, and Smile 2 as well. Here's the thing: Salem's Lot went apparently straight to streaming, but it's out in cinemas in the UK, so maybe it's just a US thing that they don't trust them. Smile 2 is in cinemas. And I'll probably have something up in the coming days. But yeah, 2 new horror movies for you to go check out reviews of.
And you can find me at Jacob Film Guy. I'm going to plug 2 film magazine articles this week that were... One because I watched the movie, the other because it was interesting. The first is Sexual Assault in Wes Craven's Filmography by guest writer Izzy Santini. So go read that one. And also... Woman of the Hour, reviewed by Margaret Rorty. I watched that movie, and it's on Netflix, directed by Anna Kendrick.
Yeah, no, directorial debut. Another woman getting behind the camera. Good to see.
Yep.
Also, I didn't know it was a true story until the very end, so I don't know if that's because I'm stupid and wasn't paying attention or what, but yeah, true story movie, if you like true crime. All right, and...
To quote Hitchcock, everybody likes a good murder provided they are not the victim. So if you like true crime, it's like everyone likes true crime. Well, probably not the people getting murdered.
Yeah. Or, never mind. I can't spoil the movie. So that is it. Thank you for listening, and goodbye.
Goodbye.
Idiot.